no.
What, 6:37? We can call it to order.
It must have been.
All right, guys, we're here. Might as well get started. Welcome, everybody. I hope you enjoyed your July off.
Yes.
I don't think we need, Nancy, do you need us to introduce ourselves to you?
Do I need what?
Do you need us to introduce ourselves to you as the sole member of the public here?
I don't think so.
Do you need introductions?
Hi, Nancy.
The only one you might not know, Nancy, is one of our new student board members. Chloe
I'm
Fawcett.
Chloe.
Oh, nice to meet you.
Chloe, yeah.
Love that name.
All right.
Make sure that, you want to make sure, Peter, the minute taker gets your name spelled.
I,
You got it?
I think you got it, yeah.
Oh, we,
Did you get it already?
Yeah, we got
Here you
that
go.
down. Thanks.
Didn't Miss Chen name her? No.
Yes.
I'm
did.
pretty much
Oh,
did
yeah.
name her Chloe. You can say it was after me if you want.
Okay. Moving right along. Do we have any additions or corrections to the agenda?
None.
None? Beautiful. We covered members of the public and introductions. Nancy? Something you'd like to bring up or
Not
just,
tonight.
just here for the fun? Anyone have any correspondence at all? I get nothing.
Oh,
I mean, we have the memo from,
maybe this is correspondence, it's, postal customer. But the Townsend Church is having a 225th anniversary. That's pretty significant,
that
225
is.
years, don't you think? September 26th, from 5 to 6, historical slideshow. Might be fun.
September 26th?
Mhm. Always trying to promote Townsend or any other of our member towns. I guess it's followed by a ham dinner.
All right.
Thank you.
Pass it around.
I will.
All right, so we can move right on to administrative reports. Doreen, you're first up. I would ask that everybody I would hope that everybody had a chance to get through all of this stuff and could ask questions or whatever, because if we go through this, we need a separate meeting just for these documents, I'm afraid. I know what you've been doing all summer, writing
Nicely
reports. Thank you.
Well, I will say, Doreen points out, some of this is not entirely new since it's all about Title I.
No, I know. But did anybody have any questions for Doreen on the reports?
I wanted to just thank her for making them clear and concise. There was a lot of information. It was overwhelming when I first opened it, and as I started, I just appreciate the way you write reports, so thank you. I didn't have any questions.
Oh, I'd certainly second that. I gave you a hard time about the volume, but they were easy to get through. I made it through all of them.
Very understandable.
Understandable. Go ahead.
What is planning room kid?
It's the first time I've seen that term. So we do have a planning room down on sea level. There's 2 staff people who work in there, the campus supervisor, and then there has been an assistant to the campus supervisor, but actually this fall it's basically a second campus supervisor. There's also our 504 learning plan coordinator. And I would assume that that was a comment made by students about peers who spend a lot of time in the planning room because they're either sent out of class or because it might actually be part of their safety plan. It might be a part of, they had a conflict with the teacher and they couldn't return to class until they met with the teacher, and that would all involve the planning room. Or anything to do with the discipline, really, or safety. And there are many students who, because it's about 50% of our students didn't have a behavior referral this past year, so they wouldn't have gone to the planning room. And then there's a number of students, about 10, who have had more than 8 behavior referrals, so maybe they would qualify as a planning kid, but actually I wonder if Chloe could speak to that. Because I don't know if you've ever heard kids talk like in that way before?
I've never heard any of my peers use the term planning room kid, but I would assume that if one of the students at Leland and Gray used it, that it would be referring to a kid that spends a lot of time in the planning room. But I couldn't tell you for sure.
It's the old going to the principal's office.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, except they don't wait. There's someone there ready to work with them, and the goal is to get them back into class and to school life as quickly as possible.
Mhm. Yeah, 'cause I saw it twice on here, thing about planning room.
Emily?
I had a couple of questions. I've organized myself. There was a lot to read. Thank you for all your work on this and putting all this together, because it really does make a big difference. I wondered on, let's see, where am I? I'm on your principal's report. No, I'm on the Title I report. And on page 2, there's a reference to core math.
Mm-hmm.
Could you explain core math
Sure.
to me?
Core Math is a new class that's being offered this fall and spring as a half-credit class for special needs students who are very far behind in mathematics,
Okay.
whose achievement level is probably not above 4th or 5th grade. I shouldn't say probably, I know that. And so most of them have completed 7th grade and 8th grade math with a lot of accommodations and modifications of what their achievement was expected to be, and they're not going to be able to succeed in Algebra 1 without working on the fundamentals. For 2 years, the consultant, Mahesh Sharma, was working with us, and he really focused on the foundations. Numeracy, number sense, proportions, all these basics that are supposed to be pretty well imprinted in the brain by the time they're out of really 3rd grade, just like you want every student reading by the end of 3rd grade. And for these students, that hasn't happened, and so the class is about 8 to 10 students. They'll be co-taught by a math teacher and a special educator. That's the origins. I mean, we really had to do something, honestly. We needed to have a math class designed based on the actual, I should say, based on addressing the actual deficits in their math knowledge. It can't just be keep modifying the mainstream curriculum, because we never
Right,
got down
right,
to
that makes
those,
sense.
the foundation, which means they couldn't balance a checkbook or do any of the things that you would want someone to be able to do with basic math in adult life.
So, I just asked Joe if I could follow
Oh.
up, which he said was okay. So, when you first came here, I think we had a course which was, that disappeared pretty quickly, for good reason, I thought, called General Math. Can you give me the difference between the two?
There were 2 classes. There was general
I
math,
remember
and there was
general.
something like math workshop.
I
And
remember that one.
from what I understand about general math, because that they were taught by math teachers, and there was an established curriculum. It wasn't actually based on students' learning plans and the very specific testing all those students had to determine that they had a disability in math.
So it was just a basic course offering in mathematics, as opposed to this is targeted toward the needy students.
Right, and the goal is for all of these kids to get to Algebra 1.
Thank you.
And they might be able to at the end of the first semester, and then there's a half-credit course the second semester, and hopefully they can get there by the end of the second semester.
That's great. That's great. I have a question for Bill.
The odd thing I saw though was, we're doing all these things, but somehow in this survey, they don't seem to get it. That this is why you're doing these things, because there were people who said, kids who said, not enough of everything's college bound and nothing for non-college bound, not enough courses for non-college bound kids and things like that. But that's all part of it, learning basic math. You have to do that in order to, so I don't understand how they're not getting it. That it's there.
I'm hoping that through the personalized learning plans that will be implemented this
Okay,
year,
yeah.
we'll make more connections between what you're learning now and what you're going to need in the future, and what courses and other learning opportunities are available to you to get you there.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
but it's interesting how loud and clear it was in the focus groups that they wanted this, like, business, financial literacy, mathematics, and we did offer that course for the first time this past year. We did not get enough enrollment to run the course, but we do have enough for this coming year.
Oh, good.
So hopefully, there'll be a buzz around it, that more students will sign up. Similarly with computer science, at very low enrollment, because kids didn't really know quite what it is, and now the classes are filling up 2 years later.
It's that printer.
It's the printer, it's the 3D printer, I gotta print 3D.
Anybody else?
What's our enrollment for this school year?
I think it's about 345.
And
I didn't see that.
do you know middle school, high school, what the numbers are?
In middle school, it's gonna be about 83, give or take 1 or 2. There are 2 small classes in the middle school this coming year.
Yeah, that is small. All students.
No, it's all students.
Okay. I have another question, whenever.
Go ahead.
The SAT scores, I don't know where I was. I wrote it didn't the scores didn't correlate, and I'm not sure if I'm right. I'm just gonna let you tell me, because I was trying to recall, and there was so much reading and going back and forth, and I was getting interrupted the whole time I was doing it. With the reading, math, and writing,
It's page 6 of the,
yeah,
of the principal's report.
right, I'm looking
Thank
at that. Does that, do the SAT, let me put it this way, do the SAT scores of our students correlate with the kneecap scores, as far as strengths and weaknesses of our student body?
I would say that based on the most recent SBAC scores, which we can talk about a little bit at the end, I haven't been able to analyze and disaggregate, but our high school students did very well in math and did very poorly in reading and writing, and that's based on the state average. I think there is much more work to be done around SAT prep. For example, it is not a common practice in our school to have strict time limits for testing. So, like, you'll finish this test in 30 minutes, period. I take the test from you, so you better speed up. Does that happen to you, Chloe?
Never. I've never had a teacher tell me that I only have this amount of time to take a test.
So the SAT is extremely strict. It's about a minute a question. And so our students haven't had that experience. So it's a different kind of thinking. I'm not attributing our low test scores to that alone, but, and kneecaps aren't really timed either.
But I
And-
guess, nice to see you.
Hi, Lynn.
I guess what I'm wondering is, are we getting, this is sort of leading me to the next thing as you're talking. Are students all across the board taking SATs or ACTs? Or are we just looking at the higher level academically inclined students taking SATs?
So if you look at the top of that
Yep.
page,
Thank
and show last year among our seniors, 63% took the SAT, which is about the number of students who were accepted to college, 67%. So roughly a third of our students aren't taking the SAT.
So without comparing it to how many went to college, and we still don't really even know. I mean, saying 63% doesn't say those 63% actually did go to college. You can assume that they did, and that that's the
Right,
college level
673.
courses, but,
Mhm.
okay.
Does that answer your question now?
Kind of.
What are
It's
we
not-
not
it's
getting at?
Well, I mean, I'm still, it's not something that you, I think, aren't getting at. It's maybe something I'm not getting at. So if I get to it, I'll ask you again. I will, I promise. I know I'm trying to form something here, and there's just so much data here, and I would just ask you, Joe, if we could maybe keep this as a topic for a little bit, because honestly, I've really been busy, and I spent a lot of time reading this. I really did. I read all of it, but I feel like I need to go back, and I need to review it again, and I need to go back to our annual report, which was where I didn't have the time to sort of start putting it all together. And so if we could just keep it on the agenda.
Sure.
Maybe not even on the agenda, but just at least something you allow for further questions about it. I think we could, yeah, maybe others have more questions. but-
Anybody else got anything? Linda,
Sorry, I'm late. I slipped back into 7 PM.
we'll forgive you this once, but
Thank you.
No, I think we should go back to some PM.
Wasn't that last
I just had a question overall. In looking at the demographics of most of the disciplinary reports, they're primarily falling into the free lunch and the special ed, like kind of startlingly so. And I,
And the girls.
yeah, so it just
Yeah,
raised,
yeah.
of the girls suspended,
Yeah.
are all eligible for free meals, that's 50%,
I
and
know.
46% of the
so it
student
just raised
body.
some questions in my mind about programs to address that, if that's a recurring
I totally thought that.
kind of a theme. I don't know what you can do about it, but it was just marked to me.
Well, if you notice about the discipline report in general, I think it's at the,
I was on page 3.
okay, yes, so on page 3 of the principal's report, it's sort of where it says suspensions, the first
Right.
line, there were 77 suspensions. That is the lowest we've had in 4 years. And the campus supervisor and the director of student services and I said, we need to find ways to reduce the number of suspensions. We feel like kids are out of class too much, and whenever possible, let's use restorative practices or other means so we can keep kids in class. That was our intention, and I was thrilled to see that we actually fulfilled that. And I mean, it's such a decline, and it's not like that we had a rise of significant incidents, like, you know, the kinds of things that you think of in high school, like fighting. I mean, certainly there continue to be concerns about substance violations in particular, but I'm glad to see that we were able to meet that intention, because there's such a correlation between suspension, a student being suspended, and a student dropping out.
I think the thing that was starting me was down under demographics, where 71%, now granted, that was 24 kids, it looked, you know, it's a big percentage, but 71% were eligible for free meals, whereas Leland and Gray, the total thing is 48 eligible, so it's a very skewed sample there of disciplinary stuff.
And the line above it as well. that-
Yeah,
of the
Absolutely,
special
61%,
education.
yeah, no, you're right.
So this
Way
is-
over the 20% in the total population.
Right, so this is very reflective of national statistics. Leland
Okay.
and Gray is
Well,
not
that's
different.
helpful to know, thank you.
But it's still very painful,
Right.
because we want to, just like we pride ourselves on the percentage of students who go to college, even though they're from low-income families, or participate in the SAT, or doing well on the standardized tests, that's not good, and I have brought it to the attention to our special education director. I think it also is reflective of the increased number of students who have a behavioral, that is an emotional disability. That it's not just a learning,
Right.
like a, you
Yeah.
know, and even their test scores might be okay, but the thing, in terms of their reading and writing levels, but number one, it's that they have great difficulty functioning in not just a classroom setting, but social settings, most settings.
That would be a really interesting correlation, it'd be hard to get at, what the test scores were for the same numbers of kids that were in disciplinary problems. You're right, they may be relatively okay, even though they're in disciplinary problems, maybe not, but.
These are probably the planning room kids who are being
Well,
referred to.
and also on the focus group, I don't know if there's any correlation between kids who act out and kids who feel that the dress code is a major issue. That
that's
stood out like
I was just
crazy,
thinking
and
that.
some of it, very sadly, was they can't afford to buy the clothes, or they said, now kids thought on what, you know, is the appropriate clothing, or what, how much you have to spend, but I thought that was very sad, that they felt disenfranchised, possibly because they can't buy the clothes or, you know.
Clothes they own won't fit the dress
Won't
code, they fit the
dress
can't afford to buy
code.
more, is what I got.
Yeah. So I don't, you know, that can create acting out, you know, if you feel that something as simple as a dress code is against you somehow.
That's interesting. That's a good point.
Yeah, because I know how you know, when I was a high schooler, How I dressed was very important. I probably spent as much time on that as I did my homework.
Did anyone catch that article over the summer in the Reformer about Brattleboro's new dress code, that they're trying to make it gender neutral, and it's been such a hot issue because it's been accused of being discriminating against females?
Oh, yeah, how do you make it, how do you do a gender neutral dress code?
Ours appears gender neutral, but there are things that guys don't wear.
Oh, right. We're not the same gender.
Right, right.
It's like pretty-
So,
You have one more,
I-
you have another question?
I do. Lyndall asked quite a bit of what I was gonna ask, but I also wanted to just clarify something under the suspensions. Obviously, when you showed those numbers from previous years and watching the numbers escalate from 2011 to 2014 was pretty scary, considering that our enrollment has been continuing to drop during that time as well. But it says there's 77 suspensions, which I understood this year. But then it says a total of 38 students were suspended, which number, 77 or 38, correlate with the number under these previous years? Do you see what I'm saying?
okay, so the 77 correlates with the number under
Okay, with
previous
137,
years.
110, okay,
Yeah.
thank you, that was, it just wasn't clear, I'm not sure what it means by total of 38 students were suspended after they said,
So,
Multiple
there are
suspensions
students,
for the
yeah,
same
yeah,
student,
Okay,
right,
okay.
multiple times, yeah,
okay,
yeah.
so that's clear.
Yeah. Once a student has been suspended,
Oh,
there's
So-
you know,
Yeah.
Yep,
they're likely to get
Gotcha.
suspended again,
Second time, third
especially if
time.
they're like smoking.
so then the numbers underneath those, in that chart were, the total suspensions.
Yes.
Regardless of number of students.
And I
So
sh-
it'd be interesting to see what the number of students was in that chart, if you could go back to it, so that it's comparative. But, you know,
Uh-huh,
because 137 isn't 137 kids.
No,
it's 137
Likely.
incidents.
it'd be interesting if there
Yeah.
were
Right.
only 38 students in that group too, you never know.
And I wanted to say the 2010-11 school year, we do not have complete data for that time. I don't even think I gave a discipline report that year. The campus supervisor we had resigned mid-year. There were some gaps, and we were still systematizing our data entry. So this is the best we have.
Okay.
I feel
That's
very
fine.
confident about the other numbers, but not that one.
I just wanted to clarify what I asked. Under the dropout, on page 7 of the same report, you've got, it's pretty straight across. I know we had a number of students that didn't complete, was it last year?
Mhm.
Year, going to year.
2014?
But it wasn't dropout.
Right, they all completed, they're
I heard
not
that.
100%.
I heard that. So explain to me the numbers here, and they weren't dropout. Some of them were expelled?
They
is
took
that-
a fifth year.
So they took a fifth year, so in this number here, how does that fit into,
This number we get from the Agency of Education.
okay,
And so they're looking at the 4-year graduation rate, they're looking at the, there's another figure that's the 6-year graduation rate for middle school, and they're looking at within 5 years as well. They're also, Stephen, maybe you can speak more to this about the algorithm variables that go into what gets pumped out that you can compare from school to school.
okay, so
If
before you
this is,
do, what's important to understand here is that this chart is not your figures, this is something from the state, you should probably get that on there so that it's
Yeah.
clear, because
Right.
that I didn't know.
and it's a
Okay.
4-year cohort.
And I do understand about how they measure it, because I have had some experience with looking at that. What I'm wondering is, with our high, we certainly were a school that didn't meet AYP, because we had a number of students who didn't graduate last year, correct? I mean, it may not have been the only reason, but it was one of those, we had a large number. It doesn't seem to be reflecting in this number.
I would have to check that. I thought we didn't make AYP because of reading and math.
Either way, I
scores.
know our numbers were very high, and it may have been those scores too, because I know the scores were also an issue, but there was another year previously, anybody who'd been on the board long enough, I think it was before you got here, Duran, where we had to expel some seniors over an issue, And it was very unfortunate, but it really skewed our graduation rate that year. It was very, very awful, and we were on AYP that, we didn't make AYP that year based on simply graduation.
Right, because that's one of the
dropout
criteria.
rate. So whether we didn't make a AYP last year for scores or not, I know those numbers were pretty high last year, and they didn't seem to be reflected in here. And I'm also wondering, and I think this, you've already answered the question by saying that these numbers are the ones that came from the state, not your own. So do we know how we're doing in 2015, what we look like? Because this has got 2014 and our kids just graduated again. I mean, you probably can't even compare
I
them
think
because
one
it's a
student
different.
in the class didn't graduate.
Okay, so we're certainly no worse, we're maybe better.
Oh, we're definitely better.
Okay, that's what I was curious about.
But at the same time, I'm referring to the kids who started school as seniors and finished a senior year. It's really the state figures that say who
Sure.
started with you in ninth grade
Yeah,
and
I
walked the
understand that.
stage and got a diploma, because you can walk the stage and still owe 2 credits.
I'm just trying to get a sense,
Yep,
and
yep.
you've given me that sense, which I
Okay,
appreciate.
it's better.
That's what I wanted to
It's
hear.
much better.
Can I ask one last thing, and it's not for Doreen, more it's for the board?
Sure.
Actually, it was Doreen that wrote it, but, on the first page of the principal's report,
Mhm.
in the last paragraph before report number 1, Doreen mentioned about the complexity of the board's goals. And it was prevented direct correlations with quantitative data, which I think is a really important message to us. And I'm wondering whether the board wants to address that and how we're going to take those many goals that we had and actually do what we had said we were going to do in the past when we first had our all-day session, having a conversation about it, and maybe try to get ourselves into a place where we can take those goals and narrow them down into something that you can actually work with, so that we can actually get that.
I would say that that's
Take the data.
definitely something we should do. We have another all-day on the 23rd of September. And we should probably plan on scheduling either that time or some meeting time, because if our goals are so complex that it's difficult to report on them, then we need to help you with that.
I'm seeing a chart where the goals are listed and then the measures of those goals. So you can look at the data that I've been reporting to you and
Mhm.
say that we think that would be a measure for this goal.
Right.
Because the goals, unlike the goals we had before, they're like a composite of many factors would go into achieving this goal. Before, goals were like, challenge kids by readiness, not age. So that's about acceleration. And so I could report on acceleration. We don't have a goal like that this time.
Right.
Because we were looking far out too, we did very long-term.
Which is fine, but it was only our first step
Right.
as well.
Yeah.
I mean, we never really went to the next step, and I think that it's really important, and I hope the board agrees that it's important that we take that next step and see what we can do to, narrow this down and get some goals in place that are actually going to be helpful for our administration and our community. So,
Yeah, and that would be helpful for us also
And our
in
kids.
discussions, because I watched the board meeting I missed from June, and there was a lot of discussion about the 2 days extra professional development, and if we had like more definitive goals, we could say, well, does that fit with our goals?
exactly.
Right.
If
Thank
it
you, Patty,
does,
that's exactly
end
what I'm
of
talking about.
discussion. Yeah.
So thanks.
Thank you. I think you're right. There's something for the retreat.
Yeah, now that retreat though, Joe, that's the WCSU board retreat.
Right.
Oh, that's
So
right, it is.
I think that as a Leland and Gray board, you wanna take care
What's
to
that one?
perhaps set your own time.
Right, I just
meeting
was
to be
misreading
able
the
to-
agenda.
Yeah, to be able to vote to a reduction, presumably a reduction of the goals or a clarification of the goals. One way to get to that too is for Doreen to provide, in consultation with me, what would be, recommended as, some of the things to consider as a high enough priority to be in a more narrowly focused set of goals. And the clarity of having the measure indicated ahead of time is absolutely essential to having focus and progress. Now, the problem is, unless you pick the measure carefully, the measure can dictate, as we know, No Child Left Behind was dictated to by math and reading scores on the kneecap. And that proved to narrow the focus, but sometimes not to the benefit of our students. So-
And of course, that's what we want.
That's what you
Benefit
want,
our
is to
students.
keep the students first. So
Right.
I just, that may involve some discussion and some
Mhm.
exploration of other measures.
Can I just clarify something about the 23rd?
Oh, yeah,
That's not an all-day meeting. It is WCSU. It starts at 5, just in case anybody out there. Right? Am I right?
yes,
It
I
starts at
think
5?
you are
It's a
right.
retreat meeting, and it is starting at 5, and didn't include that,
Okay.
sorry.
That's okay. I just wanted to make sure that
It's the
anybody
usual
hearing this.
format.
Yeah,
would
and I
know
was
that we're
looking at the
meeting.
agenda
And
real
what
quick
is
going,
this?
oh, look, we've got that.
What, is that another Act 46?
No.
Well,
Well, I think it may have.
Yeah.
it may involve some of that, for sure, but, you're going, the WCSU board members are all welcome to the next meeting on August 26th, which is the
Do we have a
46th
chair,
meeting.
a location?
No, for their retreat meeting?
Right.
No, we're trying to avoid going where we've been before due to expense, but we may not be able to do it. Yeah.
But I was just gonna suggest a place, but I
Okay,
think it
good.
would be
Okay.
too expensive.
I just,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd love to just point out 2, 3 things
Good.
in the data that I was helpful information. So on page 4 of the principal's report, where it lists over the past 5 years, student enrollment in advanced high school courses. And even though there has been declining enrollment, back in the 2010-11 school year, the first one, we had 402 students. Last year, we had about 350. Hang on, I think in total it was like 365 with the maximum enrollment last year. But still, the actual number of slots used in those courses going up substantially. Another thing I wanted to point out is that on the Title I report on page 7, there, it's figure 2C, it lists the math course enrollment and the changes that have been, that has been it's very promising, especially in Algebra 2. It's almost double what it was 5 years ago, and that is a key course to complete Algebra 2 in order to get into the higher tier colleges. Even better is to get into pre-calculus, but you can see that that is going up as well. I just couldn't help but add the projected, well, I shouldn't say projected, these are students currently enrolled in classes for next fall, and that we're offering a new dual enrollment course, Probability and Statistics, because there'd be students who completed Algebra 2, but they didn't want to do this scary thing called calculus. Now they can do Probability and Statistics. And the other, so this has been a real push for now coming into 5 years about having students participate in higher levels of mathematics. The other couple of things that I wanted to point out, what is for that in the educational support system report on page 10 of the principal's report, at the very bottom, it says reason for EST, why a kid would have an educational support plan. So these are kids who are struggling in school, but they are not eligible for a special education or a 504 plan. They don't have a disability. But you can see that 85% of them are part of it because of their low grades. And that for some of these students, they have a meeting with all of their teachers and their parent every 2 weeks to help them be on top of their grades. So I'm not sure what more we can do, but I can say that we're trying our hardest to support these struggling students. So when we talk about what interventions we take in order for students to be successful in school, this is a pretty major intervention that involves basically case management from our school counselors, working with the teachers, the students, and their parents. And a new report,
Can I ask you
go
something about
ahead,
that?
yeah?
When you say, I'm not sure what else we can do,
Mm-hmm.
what do we do then? I mean, we clearly are not in the business of washing our hands and walking away, so that's not really what I want to hear, is I'm not sure what else we can do. So what is the next, if we're, because I mean, even when you go back to the first thing you noted, in here, with this, the number of students. Your own note at the bottom of it, is it?
Yeah, I was gonna
Page
ask
7
about
of
that.
Title I.
Again, it's the free meals and the special ed,
Mm-hmm.
not advancing, and maybe a reason for discipline, again, they may feel
Right.
less worthy, less good about stuff.
Right. So I'm concerned about those students who aren't,
So for a year and a quarter, we had a math interventionist working with regular education students. We did, he moved on to another position. We didn't fill the position because of funding reasons. And so that was a very successful intervention. If that was something that we chose to fund, really all of these kids, the 45 kids listed here, would likely be a part of it, because math and language arts are areas of a lot of struggle. If we had more, say, middle school teachers available to run their own, we call it academy, which is a structured study hall, in which they were, the teachers themselves were directly on top of the students rather than, say, teaching high school courses, but there's a big focus to reduce the number of full-time equivalent teachers in a school, so that those are the kinds of next steps of greater intervention.
so then if we are unable to meet the needs of our students in the way that we're working toward, you're suggesting that the next step would be hiring more staff? I'm sorry, I just think that's what I
Those are two ways that we have used that have been very successful. I'm not saying that those are the only ways.
Okay.
One thing we are doing next fall is expanding our use of an online program called IXL. We've done IXL math with the middle school students and special needs students in the high school. It's called IXL math. It's
amazing. It's changed, it's really impacted my son and his abilities in math. Between that and I was just gonna talk about math support, because that's another thing that has completely raised his confidence and brought him through 7th grade, and he is so ready for 8th grade. And this is a kid who could not do math in 6th grade, so I'm telling you, it worked. I'm glad to hear you're supporting that program. I like it.
So we're now looking to expand it to IXL grammar, and I hope it has as much traction as IXL math, because they need help in that capacity very much. So I can't say it's only about hire more people, and certainly more hands helping more kids, because students with special needs, they get those services generally in small groups and occasion, and actually through our reading and math, we have a reading specialist, and he works with some 40 special needs students around reading and writing, and some math, to help them make progress, and really based on where they are. And so it's such a level of, it's like so discrete. There's strength in this area, there's weakness in that area, to know that level of diagnostically of what it is those kids need. But for the regular ed students, their grades, that's the indicator that they're struggling, but there could be a host of other issues. Some of them, their grades, they can't get above a certain amount because they never do their homework. So that's another kind of intervention.
Yes.
The review here of the collaborative peer review findings is addressing an awful lot of that, and I'm so a fan of that program. A lot of the questions that are being asked through the classes are addressing some of these things that we're raising. How broad scale is that in the school? I mean, are most students participating in this, or is it still a smaller group? I'm sorry, it's probably my ignorance that I'm asking this, but this seems like a good tool for what we're talking about.
The question is, are students getting the interventions? Is that
Well,
what you
it's
mean?
identifying where kids are feeling let down or not worthwhile, and that's really what we're trying to get at with a lot of these students. And this seems like a very good vehicle to then use the information. And the kids were so heavily involved in it, the students, that it seemed like a natural peer way. I get, in answer to Emily's question a little bit, I would see this as maybe a way to reach some of the goals we want to reach. Is that so, or am I reading it wrong?
Chloe, we talked a lot about this in student council, about how do we get students to wanna do better, because it helps the high-achieving students in class too, when everyone is prepared and ready to learn. Do you wanna speak to this? Your mind must be spinning right now.
Yeah, I guess it's really hard to get kids interested in something they're not interested in, as it is hard to do that with any person. But I think for the most part, the peer review, the school review process that one group did, I think a lot of the kids in the school liked it a lot, I think, because they felt like they could safely say what they wanted to say about the school. And I noticed that, like, in lunch or, like, during break, like, kids actually talked about it. Like, it was a topic that was talked about not in front of teachers, not in front of staff. Like, it was something that we talked about between ourselves, which isn't honestly something that I see a lot with the kids at Leland and Gray. We don't, unless it's like, oh, we don't like that class because we don't like this topic, like, we don't usually talk about a lot of stuff. But with the review process, a lot of the kids felt that they were safe talking about what they liked and disliked about Leland and Gray. So I feel like if we had more processes similar to the school review process, it would be really helpful to a lot of the kids who don't necessarily feel safe in classrooms or don't try as hard as others.
That's extremely exciting, what's being said.
Yeah, I was
That
just
came out of
recommending
here.
that we do that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that could be capitalized
Continue.
on. I think we might get at the heart of some of these other difficulties. The low representation of kids on free meals and, or the high representation in discipline, I think we might get at some of the problems from their point of view. Now, that's exciting. I don't know how you implement it, but.
Chloe, as a 10th grader, you're in a class where you had the same advisor all 4 years, right?
I did not.
You-
I've had two different advisors.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I had Eleanor and then I had Miss Clausen.
Okay, so are you still
I'm
Miss
in-
Clausen?
yeah,
Okay,
I'm
so
in
Eleanor
Clausen.
doesn't have an advisory anymore.
She
so
does have an advisory
Oh.
now. What happened was I had Eleanor in 7th grade and 8th grade, and then in 9th grade there were only 4 of us. In 8th grade there were only 4 of us in her advisory. So then they moved us to Miss Clausen's advisory in 9th grade, and then this year Eleanor has a different advisory of kids in my grade. I don't know
Oh,
why.
that's so
but-
interesting. Okay, so in principle, your class, I'm embarrassed now, was supposed to be the
Runner, I
first
goes to
class
the-
where all the students stayed with the same advisor since they began in 7th grade.
My kids did that even when they were here, so I
Okay.
know what you're talking about.
Terrific, terrific. It wasn't.
Back to the future.
Yes, Back to the
It's a
Future.
goal.
And so with the introduction of personalized learning plans with grades 7, 8, 9 next year, we can have these kinds of conversations. And what I'm hoping to report on in the months to come is the introduction of something called counsel, which is a restorative practice. Think about the community members sitting around the campfire with a talking stick and talking about the issues that matter to their community. And so that's something we're going to be instituting in all the advisories, and they'll have different topics throughout the year, but using this kind of very much relationship-focused format. Not about filling out paperwork, though that's gonna have to happen sometimes with the personalized learning
And the
plans.
safety piece is coming through very clearly.
Yes, so always a focus group, essentially.
I do want to say the one thing that's constantly on my mind about advisory, I guess for me personally, since I've had 2 different advisors, was with Eleanor. She had us keep a college portfolio. She had us keep all our achievements and all of our stuff in a folder. But when I moved to Miss Clausen's advisory, we don't do stuff like that, and I would actually suggest that advisors are pushed more to encourage kids to keep portfolios, because to me it made it seem that Eleanor cared more about my education.
And so that's
Which-
gonna be required for
Yeah.
7, 8, and 9 next year
Yeah.
as part of the PLP, that they have to have a portfolio. But I really appreciate your suggestion that let's have it for the rest of the grades
Yeah.
too, even for the seniors to put together, if they haven't put together a portfolio
Yeah.
already. The last thing I wanted to just share, if I could just, because I know you guys want to move on.
Mhm.
But did you have more that you wanted to share?
Oh no, that's
is that, on the last page of the Title I grant report,
Thank you.
yes,
I
so
was
this is
gonna-
this is baseline data, we've never reported this before, but it's become such a significant area of our counseling department that I wanted to share this. And so you can see that 29% of our students had to be addressed in some way because of mental health needs. And the other, the following statistics of the number of instances and when we needed to do some kind of intervention, and I hope, the statistics around the percentage who have been referred outside is actually very low in comparison, but our counseling staff is extremely busy, and it's increasing.
Turn the chart up above it with the participation in abuse prevention programs. There's no percentage there, so I don't know really what that looks like. But I wondered, are we really meeting the needs of our kids in that area as well? Clearly we seem to, I'm concerned about it. I know that this is an issue going on everywhere. Are we meeting the needs of our kids? Are we reaching all of our kids? And how many of our kids are involved with abuse prevention? Or how many kids are abusing?
Based on the 2013 Youth Risk Behavior Survey, it showed positive trends for Leland and Gray, declines in substance use, decline in tobacco, and in other major areas that had been on the increase since about year 2000, and quite a few areas lower than the state average. So that was wonderful. We should have a new report fairly soon because there was a 2015 survey as well. There are mandatory substance abuse prevention programs for all students involved in co-curricular activities and their parents. We have changed our reporting guidelines, allowing students participating in co-curriculars to self-report, which means they still have to do the substance abuse counseling as a result, but they have less of a penalty in their participation. And there was a real buzz in 2011 around substance abuse and kids in co-curriculars. It was in some ways very obvious when students were taken off the team and feeling like we were losing a championship as a result of poor behavior choices. Are you still hearing a buzz like that? That it's centered on, like, particularly the athletes? I don't hear that anymore, especially since we started implementing these programs. But you guys have your ear to the ground, so. No, okay, so.
Well, and it seems like the whole United States is going for the idea of helping people who are involved with drugs and alcohol as opposed to penalizing them. The penalizing them just drives them deeper into the recesses where they figure out how not to be found. So, and they'd probably like to not do it as much as we would like them not to do it. But if they feel they're going to be penalized. So, yeah, that's good, we're following that.
We'll have this report updated each year for the mental health.
Yes.
Because that is a
Yes.
huge issue. It's not just Leland and Gray. It's not just Vermont. It's everywhere, and it's scary. And we need to keep track of it.
Emily, you also asked before about education, in terms of what kind of prevention education they're receiving. So my first year here, 7th and 8th grade health was a semester. So for a period of day, but a semester. The state minimum requirement is for a quarter. And as part of reduction in staff, that was a place where we reduced. There was concern at that time, and I think there continues to be concern, because it's essentially, she teaches half the curriculum, what the state requires, and she can deliver it during that 9-week period, but it's not the same as having twice as much time to delve deeper. And if that's a direction based on the data that the board would like to go into, I'll follow your lead.
Is there any push to change the requirement at the state level, do you know? Are there
Not
any?
that I've heard.
And I don't even know if the educational quality standards has a minimum for any of these areas, whether it's middle or high school, except for PE.
PE.
They say it's gotta be addressed in some way,
Right.
but it's not, this is the seat time, which is what the old quality standards would say. So it's truly up to us, but I do think it's critical that we have a certified health teacher delivering that curriculum. It's not something that can get kind of sandwiched into social studies class.
No.
Good.
So those are the pieces that I wanted to
Thank
pick
you.
out, but you guys all picked out the other areas.
Thank you. Well, and I think I would take Emily's suggestion, we'll keep that under
Yeah.
old business for a little while, just because, you know, I know I'll probably read it again, and, you know, I'm certain others will come up with more questions. It is a lot of data. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Stephen?
Yes, thank you. I would follow up with, since math's one of my favorite topics. This probability statistics course, actually, we teach probability statistics now from the very early grades up. It isn't like a new thing. It used to be we compartmentalize certain topics in math, and the new SBAC standards, CCSS, they're called, Common Core State Standards. Certainly have integrated that at all levels, but this opportunity for probability statistics to study it at a more in-depth level, at a higher level, is I think very important. And actually, in terms of various occupations and pursuits in the future, vocational and avocational, probability statistics is more universally applicable than calculus. I don't think anyone at the table here has claimed to have used calculus recently to do anything, but you probably have engaged your mind a bit in probability statistics, even if it was only to figure out how much you were saving on the sales, you know, a sale item. Anyway, just put in that pitch for that kind of change that you will see at Leland Gray as well as nationwide. And this may be, future changes such as this may be driven, hopefully, by the personalized learning plans, personal learning plans as students proceed. Actually, we're doing 7th, 8th, and 9th this year, are we not? Which is ahead of what the state requirement is. But as those kids move along and edit and refine their personal learning plans, that should drive our reform in terms of what we're offering students. Of course, it's not just the students' call, but parents involved in that conference and so forth too. But as they get closer to being seniors, you're more in command of that, of course. I appreciate Chloe's candor and response to the questions the board presented. Thank you very much for being here.
Of course.
I look forward to singing with you again, I hope. I wanted to address staff changes at the office. If anybody has a question, I did put out something to all the boards about what was going to happen in terms of Samantha Bofat. Congratulations to securing being appointed to the Wardsboro faculty for grades 5, 6. In terms of preparation and prospects for change at Leland and Gray's entering class in the future 7th grade, we have quite a 5, 6 cohort now of teachers, you know, across the SU, particularly Wardsboro and Townsend, Newbrook, and Jamaica, where our major sending schools. They're all meeting in a grade level assessment group, but they also will have the same coach in terms of a mentor. Tina Shakespeare, who retired from Reedsboro, 5, 6 teachers, is contracting for her service to do that and to actually coordinate the mentoring of all teachers in the SU, although she won't be providing direct mentoring for many, at least initially here beyond that 5, 6 grade level.
She retired from Wardsboro. not
Retired from
Reedsboro.
Wardsboro, sorry, thank you. Reedsboro is another place in my past.
I
I'm
know.
sorry, I've been around
You're
here.
you're going
There are a lot
back.
of boroughs,
Going
okay,
back.
yeah. And let's see, the only other thing about that was, just to be clear, we have Bridget Cole, newly appointed at Jamaica. She actually is coming back to Vermont, grew up in Wilmington, as a famous principal teacher, father from Marlboro. And And then I mentioned Samantha Bovat, and then Jason Cragen transferred over at his request, applied and won a position in Newbrook. That's why the Jamaica position was open for 5-6. And we have Amanda Paradise, newly received her graduate degree, master's degree from Marlborough, and will be teaching 5-6 as well at Newbrook. So those are some changes. I mean, they're particularly of interest to the Leland Gray Board because those are the sending schools. And we want to make sure that we're reaching for the best. Let's see, other staff changes, Meg, she goes by Meg Wright, Margaret Wright is newly hired to replace Allison as receptionist and my administrative assistant. In my office, she was on the phones beginning yesterday, that was her first day. She came to us from Landmark College, quite experienced with administrative assistant and receptionist things in the education field, although it was private school and, you know, post-secondary, so it's a little bit different deal. She's learned a lot, and Allison is guiding her and sharing all she can, and then Allison is now taking Sam's position, assisting Abby Dillon in special ed. So I think we're pretty well set. We got a good team, dealt with the change, I think, very well, and we'll proceed to have high expectations of client service and welcome your phone calls from the public. I think that's about it for changes in the staff. We have our administrative retreat next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, with the principals with me at Grafton. I think that I sent out, it was pretty late last night, but I think you may have gotten the agenda
We did.
for
We
that,
did.
You
for
did
that
send
as
it.
board members, okay? So,
You sent it to everybody,
yeah,
not
right.
just board.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
You're right, it
You
was
were
there.
thorough.
Trying to be upfront there with everybody. Now, you'll probably ask about Act 46, that comes up later in our agenda, we'll
Right.
talk about that later. Let's see, I think that that's about all I had to say, except if I could, I would like to take a moment for us to reflect on the tragedy north, with Laura Sobel being murdered by a disgruntled parent, obviously, who, was a DCF case and probably had to do with custody, and I don't want to read more into it. But I have to assure you that all of those of us who work on behalf of kids, whether in the public school or in the agencies, social service and so forth, recognize the tremendous challenge in the present circumstances of society as we face it in the United States. And these unthinkable things really happen. And they certainly didn't when I began my career. But I remember the first time a parent came to my school, not this one, with a gun. I recognized that probably the profession of teaching and helping students had changed and put all of us at more risk than we had imagined. Anyway, it's a reality we all face, and you now are all mandatory reporters regarding abuse of children, and you being the public, and it's all on behalf of students, and it takes great courage to remain consistent and loyal to those lofty goals. So I want to thank Laura and others who serve our students, and just take a moment to contemplate our gifts. Thank you. Any questions?
Who wants to do these?
Anybody
No.
questions for me?
I have questions.
Yeah.
Quick, two things. One, I could have mentioned this to Darren too, but I just wanted to say thank you for being a support system at Leland Gray for the evacuation of Valley Campus.
Oh, yes.
When we picked up my mother-in-law, we came here to Leland Gray to do so. So, it's nice that we have Leland Gray here who can provide
You're here.
space. It was really, I mean, it's the second time they were evacuated. The first time they went to the town hall. And although that's lovely, it's not as easily accessed by elderly people. So this time it was really a lot nicer, I think, for people, even though there aren't comfy chairs, but you know, so thanks for that. The question I wanted to ask you, Stephen, was about retirements. You were talking about some retirements and things. And I know over the years, you know, you and I have gone back long enough to remember, we keep saying, oh yeah, there's so many, so-and-so number of percentage of people who are ready for retirement. We don't know when they'll actually retire, but they're ready. But we knew there was going to come a time, and there was a change in the retirement. I forget what the change was.
It had something to do with the benefit
It
for
had the
spouse
benefits
on
thing, so
medical
now
coverage.
we've reached that point. Are we seeing an unusual number of retirements? Are we seeing a number that we expected? Are we seeing less than we expected? It makes a difference for our budgets, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't want all of our teachers who are ready to retire to all leave at once, because I think we have like 50% of our staff ready, you know, eligible maybe or close to it for retirement. So I'm not suggesting that. But I also am realizing that we're one of the highest spending high schools in the state, and we are not going to be able to increase our budget this year very much without, you know, facing some pretty stiff financial penalty. So,
Well,
not just for Leland Gray, but for everybody?
Right, well,
How are we
I
looking?
think before I speak specifically, I'd want to review.
Well, I'm not
the-
asking
yeah.
specifics, I'm
Well, I
just saying-
understand, review because, in fact, in preparation for the budget, that's exactly what we have to do, is look at
Right.
what the situation is with our staffing. And of course, an administrator is not, it's not appropriate, let alone best practice, to actually ask somebody to retire. That's
Right,
not.
that's not what I'm
that's not the
suggesting
deal.
either, I'm just wondering.
But
whether-
it is important to know who the target audience might be, who might be available, and we've done this before regarding offering incentives or not. There's no obligation to do so. We'd like the timing to be perfect. Sometimes the timing doesn't work out perfectly. I do know that in the case of the two retirements, or at least the change at Jamaica and the one at Wardsboro specifically, there really isn't much in the way of cost savings on that, because you hire quality people or experienced people, or the medical, you know, health benefits are different. So you know, the ideal is to have someone retire at $70,000 and hire somebody at 40. But it doesn't always work out that way, is what I'm saying, because we hire the best people that are coming in on the employment pool. But there's no doubt that Newbrook will benefit from the change that they've had there, and we benefited here at Leland and Gray from change in, you know, of retirement that came after the budget. Mr. Redfield was recognized, he's retiring. He'll be teaching us, probably teaching one class, but, huh?
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Long as you've been around, you've
The
been.
reason, those of you who don't know the reason why Patty's so amazed is because
It's a-
Ted graduated from Leland Gray, went to, I think it was Springfield College, but got his math degree
Came back here.
and came back to teach here, and this has been his entire career. And this
Ted Redfield was a teacher here when I went to high school.
Oh, back in the
And not my
dark
teacher,
ages.
but, and it was a long time ago, I look younger than I am, but I'm not. And he, you know, I greatly admire him, I admired him back then, and I'm, you know.
While we're committing people too, I want to thank Joe for attending the Act 46 information meeting up at Montpelier with me and other board members last Friday. It was only last Friday, right?
Right.
Yeah, good, okay. Bud went too. He's a witness. All right, let's move on unless you have other questions.
Anybody else for Stephen? All right, Bud. I know
Okay.
you've got a contract. What else you got?
Yes, it's a renewal of the agreement with the Abbey Group.
Mhm.
It has gone through the process. It's been approved by the Child Nutrition Program up at the AOE. I'll tell you that although the Abbey Group was seeking an increase in the administrative fee from $7,000 to $10,000, that's not available to them because this is a renewal, not a newly bid contract. So they're held at the $7,000. So it's just part of the process. We need the board to approve the contract for another year, so it's substantially unchanged. And then we'll ask the board chair to sign it, and then we'll file it again with the state. It's a rather cumbersome process. I do want to publicly thank Deb Mears in my office, who does the yeoman's job on getting this paperwork together.
And we're pleased with the service that's been provided.
Yeah, I haven't heard any, if people are complaining that it's not getting to me. I suspect it would.
Will it go out to bid again next year, is that what you're saying?
I'd have to double check that.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
But it has a cycle where
Yeah.
it goes out to bid.
yeah, we put Jamaica out to bid this year for a new contract, so there's a cycle.
Okay.
You say substantially unchanged? Is
Yeah.
the-
I don't see,
Nothing of substance
No,
has changed?
there's-
Dates and things?
yeah,
Okay.
And the liability or the expense is the same,
Right.
from our
Right.
point of view. Yeah. That's key.
Anybody have any questions about this? So we just need a motion to approve it then.
I'll make a motion to approve the contract with the Abbey Group, and direct the chair to sign on the board's behalf.
Second.
Okay. Excuse me, it's been moved and seconded to approve the contract with the Abbey Food Group. Any discussion on that?
Do the kids like the food?
That's your question, Denise.
I don't know, I take food from home. My mom works for the Abbey Group, actually.
Oh, I'm
She has to
the
recuse
food
herself.
related-
Her mom works
no
there and she
comment.
brings
Oh,
food from home.
Yeah, I don't eat I bring lunch from home, so I don't really hear that many complaints about it, so
Good.
I would assume that the kids like it.
It didn't come out in that survey here, I don't think.
Yeah, there was no complaining in the survey.
Nothing.
Yeah,
Because
nothing.
I'll tell you,
I
all
wondered
the
why.
other schools I've worked in,
Food.
when they do a student survey, it's all about
I
food.
wondered why.
But that has been, you know, that
answers the
it
question.
was, maybe it's been eclipsed by the dress code, I don't know.
Yeah.
All right.
And now they're getting some new equipment this coming year, right?
Yes.
Didn't we have some stuff in the budget coming?
There, some replacement equipment, but, nothing that gets us closer to actually having a real kitchen.
Oh,
So.
All right, so, any more discussion? All right, all in favor of approving the Abbey